right, so we're currently working on converting fractions to decimals, and we are using division. So we are just going to do some practice. And the nice thing about practice with this is all you need is a pencil and a piece of loose leaf and an eraser and a creative mind, because we're going to come up with our own questions. So the first thing I want to say is when we're converting fractions to decimals in grade 6, we just go to hundredths. So convert to hundredths. Okay, so that, an example of that would be 0 and 25 hundredths. So that is equivalent to 25 over 100. Okay, that's hundredths. When we're doing the division, we just go to to the hundredths place value. We don't want to go much further than that in grade 6 because we don't really need to. Eventually you will need to, but not in grade 6. And then you'd use the same strategy. So let's just look at converting a fraction. Let's just start with 1/4. That's a pretty standard fraction, or a benchmark fraction. So 1/4 looks like that. 1/4, or 1/4 is another way that you can say it. So how we do this is the numerator goes in the hut. So I'll just make a little note here. Numerator goes into hut. So that'll look something like this. I'll go one line down. Now I use my lines with loose leaf. It's a tool. There's a reason there's lines on it, to keep everything organized. So my numerator in this case is 1, and that's going to go into the hut, which means my denominator is going to stay outside of the hut. So I'll just make a little arrow. Denominator stays outside hut. Point form. Okay, so let's start our division sequence. So we go 4 into 1. Well, firstly, we know that that is impossible. It won't go. And anytime we can't divide in, we add a 0. But since we are going to a decimal, we no longer just stop the question there. We can actually solve this. It's a fraction. It's a decimal number. So how to do that is these next 2 steps. Firstly, add your decimal behind the 0. There's your and. So 0 and. Then we add a 0 underneath the next place value. So if you were to look at this, we have our place value here, which is our 1's place value. Then we would move this into our 10ths place value over here by adding a 0. Not to confuse you, let's just go through the steps. So we have now 4 into 10. 4 into 10. And we know that will go 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8. So therefore it'll go. And we try and make sure it's always in line. Always in line. Then we do our multiplication. 2 times 4 equals 8. And we write the answer to that multiplication question below. Then we do our subtraction. Of course, 0 minus 8 won't work, so we have to borrow. And we borrow that the same way we normally would, and we make this 10. 10 minus 8 we know is 2. Then we do our bring down, but there's nothing to bring down. There is. There's always an infinite amount of zeros. So we're going to add a 0, and we're going to bring down the 0. Now we can go 4 into 20, and we know it goes evenly. And it goes 5 times, because 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 4 equals 20. And we know the question is over when we end up with a 0. Or we know the question is over when we get to the hundredths place value, because you will know that some fractions will go on forever. Some fractions converting to decimal will go on forever. That's why we'll just, in grade 6, we just stop at the hundredths. Now, pretty interesting that we have here 0 and 25 hundredths. When I say it that way, 25 hundredths. That is exactly right. 1/4 is equivalent to 25 hundredths. It's the same thing. So 25 hundredths. So we converted this fraction 1/4, and we can see that it is actually a decimal 0 and 25 hundredths as a decimal. And if you think about money, that would be like a quarter in money. So 25 cents. Okay, so that's how you do division of converting fractions to decimals with division. We'll do one more to go through the steps one more time, and we'll just do something a little bit different, maybe 3/8. 3/8. So in this case, 3/8, we know the numerator will go into the hut. So I'm going to make my little hut. Oh, broke my pencil. So I maybe have 2 pencils available, and I'm pushing a little extra hard here because I want it to show up nicely on the camera. So 3 will go into the hut, and 8 will stay outside the hut. So 8 doesn't go into 3, so we start with division, and it goes 0. The question doesn't end there because we are going to a decimal. Therefore, we're going to add our decimal here. We're going to add our decimal here just so we know that it's the right place value. Then we're going to add our 0 back here. And we'll say that this is 30. So 8 into 30 we know does go. And if we do the math, so sometimes you have to guess and check. Is it 4? Let me check. 8 times 4. So you can use other white space. 8 times 4, well, hold on a second. That equals 32. So that's too much. That's too much. What is 8 times 3? Oh, yeah, okay, 24. Ah, that's the one, because it makes sense. It's 3. So we're going to put a 3 over here. So then 3 times 8, we just did that over there, is 24. We'll put the answer to our question below. Then we will subtract. Put our equal line. And 0 minus 4 can't work, so we'll turn this to a 2, turn this to a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, then we add a 0 here. We have to add that 0 because we need something to bring down. And we're not at hundredths yet, so we'll keep going. We'll bring it down. So we're at 60. So now we go back up to the top and we do our divide again. 8 into 60. Again, I have to guess and check a little bit. 8 times... No, it's definitely not 5 because that equals 40. It's quite a bit. 6 is 48. 8 times 7 is 56. Ah, that sounds right. 7 equals 56 because that would definitely be more than 60 if we went 8, 64. So 8 times 7. There we go. 7 times 8, we did the math over here, is 56. We subtract. Okay, again, borrow when we do a subtraction because 0 can't take away 6. So we have 10 take away 6, and we are left with 4. 5 take away 5 is 0. Now, at this point, we're just ignoring that there's still a number down here. We're not doing remainders with decimals. Essentially, we could keep this going to thousandths. All we really have to do is just extend the line, add a 0, bring it down, and we'd make that 40, and we'd actually see that this is 375 thousandths. But in grade 6, we can just stop at 37 hundredths. So 3/8 is actually equivalent to 37 hundredths. 37 hundredths. It means the same thing. Okay? So if we were to ask a question, and the reason why we're learning all this is because it's a lot easier to see when you have like denominators, or you can line up place values. If I were to ask, compare 1/4 to 3/8, well, you can convert them to a decimal. And then maybe even put them on a number line. You can convert them to a decimal because you'll know now that 1/4 is actually 25 hundredths, or 25 hundredths like that, or 25 hundredths like this. And 3/8 is actually 37 hundredths like that as a decimal, or 37 hundredths like this. Now it's pretty easy to see when they have the same denominator that clearly 3/8 is larger than 1/4.